So you find yourself in a season of suffering, and you've been in it for a while now, long enough to know one thing clearly: nobody gets it. You've tried talking about it. You've gone to people you trust, looking for something concrete, and what you got back was generic, surface level, 5-minute solutions to problems you've been living inside for years. And you smile, because what else can you do? So you stop reaching out, not because you're proud, but because talking about it doesn't actually change anything. This is just a season you have to get through. No one can carry it for you. So you go quiet. You pull back. You isolate. And somewhere in that silence, if you're honest, you're also angry at God, at the situation, at yourself, because He's pushed you further than you thought you could go. And you're standing at the edge of yourself, wondering how much longer this is supposed to last. But you've made peace with something. You've told yourself, this is just the lonely chapter, the gap between who you were and who you're becoming, the season before the breakthrough. And maybe that's true, but here's the question nobody asks: what if the lonely chapter itself is what's keeping you stuck? Let's talk about it. So I wrote all of this because I'm currently going through this myself. Could probably say for almost 2 years now, I've been in a season where it's just rough. Like, work is just really, really tough. I've started doing my articles, and articles are just tough in general. And I've found myself pushed to the edge, if I'm being honest. And last year was the most difficult, and then this year came along, and this year's been the most difficult. But something I learned last year was, yeah, most people just really don't get it. You go through a season where you're really struggling with something, and you go to people, and you're looking for something. And for me, this was particularly a church. I'd go there. I remember there was this one guy I was speaking to at a small group we had. He had gone through some grief, like serious grief, that I'm like, man, I don't know if I'd be able to retire from that. Recover from that. He had his wife passed away quite early on, and his daughters don't want to speak to him. And for me, I'm like, damn, that's rough. So I speak to this guy. I'm like, this is somebody who gets it, right? He's supposed to get it. He's supposed to understand what it's like to suffer and go through a season where you just, yeah, man, like, it's just rough. It's dark. And I remember speaking to him, and he said, have you thought about giving it to God? And in my head, I was just like, what the hell? What on earth? I'm like, that is just not it. And I just came to the conclusion that people fall into one of two categories, or the people that don't understand and that would kind of frustrate you when you're going through a season of suffering, is either they don't get it, and I found there's a lot of people, they don't understand working, what it's like to be doing articles, to be working like crazy hours, like just relentlessly, and the workplace is just, it's relentless. I don't want to use toxic. There's just a lot of challenges you face in there that people just don't understand. Like, they think you're just going through something, like you're just working a little bit hard, but they don't understand, like, it's relentless. Um, so they either fall into the category of they don't understand what you're going through, or the second one, which you can't really blame people too much for, but that category of people who they're just not invested enough to actually give you proper advice. Because it's like, I'm chatting with this guy for 5 minutes, telling him what I've been going through for the last year or so. And you think what I couldn't come up with in a year, being in this, you can come up with in 5 minutes. And hearing my problems for 5 minutes, it just doesn't work that way, right? And it's kind of like this conversation I was speaking about it. The guy was like, have you tried just giving it to God? People aren't invested enough. Most people aren't. And you can't expect them to, right? You're not going to be invested in every single person's journey or what they're struggling with. And for me, I just came to the conclusion, I was like, man, I don't really want to talk about this with many people. I have a handful, like maybe 2 or 3 people that I want to talk to. But I was like, most people, I'm just not talking about this. I'm just going to be like, hey, I'm fine. Or, work's a bit tough, but it is what it is. But I'm not getting into details with you, because you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it, or you're not going to be invested enough to actually help me. And also, talking about it, I just kind of found doesn't really solve anything. Like I'll appreciate a deep conversation with kind of the two or three people I've that have been helping me through the season, where I'm like, the context, what I'm going through, and there's this bomb that just got dropped on me last week. Let's talk about it for like an hour. You can actually give me some kind of practical advice, but also I just know you understand. But for most people, I'm like, it doesn't fix anything, so why would I talk about it? And I kind of realized in this topic of the lonely chapter, I don't know if you guys have heard about the lonely chapter. I think it was coined Chris Williamson and Alex Hormozy. So it's this concept of when you're trying to improve or change your life, you find yourself in a position where you've outgrown your old group of friends, your old habits, etc. But you're not sufficiently developed enough to be friends with the people that you want to be like, right? So you kind of find yourself in this middle ground where you're just there and there's no one really that kind of understands you. And it's lonely. It is lonely because you're just not going to find people that are kind of on your level, for lack of a better term, right? You're not going to find people that are on this journey that you're walking. Like if I'm trying to paint a picture of what this could maybe look like, I'm thinking of like a path. You're walking a path, and it's kind of like wide. Like there's a lot of people right at the start. So you're in this area where you're just doing the things that normal people do. You go out, you watch movies, you eat junk, whatever, right? You kind of do this thing that everyone else does. You live this life that everyone else does. There's a lot of people there. Then you're like, man, I want more for myself than this, right? And you kind of have to walk this long path. And there's kind of a bridge that you need to cross before you get over to the other side, where it's kind of the people that are self-actualizing, the people that are actually living lives that they're going to look back on and be like, wow, I'm really proud that I did this, or people that are just getting after it in life. And you've kind of walked sufficiently enough, like you've left most of the people, right? You're ahead of most of the people. And now you're kind of on this bridge where it's very scattered. There's not a lot of people there. And on the other side is where people who've actually made it over that hill, and you're just here where you're isolated and you can't go back because you're leaving that for a reason, but you're not quite there yet, and you find yourself in this middle ground, on this bridge where it's just lonely. You're by yourself. And something I found for myself anyways is that suffering actually accelerates this lonely chapter. It pushes you into it, kind of like what I've just shared, going through a tough season, and there's not a lot of people that really get it. And I think when you are suffering, it does put you in a place where you start to look at a lot of things, right? You start to wonder like what actually matters, because you're in survival mode, right? You're trying to find a way to navigate the challenges that you're facing, and these challenges they're monumental for where you're at, right? That you've never experienced them before. And you find that you just look anywhere for help, and you find, man, I'm not getting help there. And it's like, man, this particular thing in my life is not helping me. This thing is not helping me. And you just start cutting stuff out because you're like, oh, you're on the journey. Let me go back to my analogy. You're on the journey, you're walking, you're on the bridge, and it's like, man, all the stuff is heavy. I need to cut off stuff. I need to just keep stuff that's helping me. And I think suffering is important for that, because it's that whole thing of being refined in the fire, right? You don't get to ask yourself the important questions if life is kind of just going great. You don't need to. Why would you? Life is fine. My next question is kind of, what am I doing? What am I doing tomorrow? Oh, there's this thing happening on Friday. I want to go to that thing. But when you're suffering like intensely, you start asking questions. You start asking real questions. You start asking difficult questions. Are these people that I have in my life the people I want to have in my life? Is this thing that I do on a weekly basis something I actually really want to be doing for the rest of my life? Does this serve me? Does this help me in the season I am? And for a lot of the things, it's kind of, you find yourself in a position where you're like, currently where I'm at in this season of suffering, to get through it, there's certain things I need and certain things I don't need. And you ask yourself very difficult questions like, am I willing to cut this off? And something else I just thought about it in relation to this is your problems are very specific. Right? When you're going through the lonely chapter, you're going through immense suffering, your problems are too specific for everyone to kind of have their fingers in, right? Because I mean, people don't understand what's going on. It's just going to frustrate you. So you start cutting out people. You start being like, man, okay, I don't need this person. I need this person. I don't need this person. And yeah, that's where you find yourself in that lonely chapter, because the people you really want, you can identify, man, I need this kind of person in my life. I want the person. For me, using that analogy, right? I'm walking from one destination to the other. I've left a lot of the people that are kind of willing to stay stuck or where they're at in life, and I'm trying to get to this other level. I don't want to be friends with those people, right? I can't quite be friends with those people yet because I'm not there. What I want the people that are just in that middle ground with me. I want the people that are walking the same journey, but are also kind of at the same point within the journey. And that's tough. That's really tough because it's rare. It really is rare. And I think as the path just goes further and further along, it's just less and less people because more and more people fall off, right? And I just had to think about this thing for the lonely chapter, and specifically suffering is, maybe it's not a bug, maybe it's a feature, right? Maybe you going through suffering is not just um, something that just happens by accident, right? Like maybe you going through suffering. So using my story, right, where I'm suffering quite a lot, and there's not a lot of people to help me right now. There's not a lot of people I want to speak to because of what I'm going through. Like I wish life was all sunshine and rainbows and I could be friends with everyone, but it's not. And it's like maybe that suffering pushing you into the lonely chapter is not a bug, it's a feature. It's meant to be there because it causes you to ask the questions necessary to decide who needs to be in your life, what needs to be in your life, and what do you need to be doing in your life. And you get to kind of trim off the fat, if we can put it that way. And that becomes a very necessary part of your journey. Suffering so intensely that it causes you to ask those questions. But I have a reframe for this, right? Because while being in the lonely chapter is something that happens as a function of going through suffering, maybe the lonely chapter isn't meant to be more than that. It's not meant to be more than just a chapter. And maybe it's not the ideal. Like you going through suffering causes you to kind of trim off, the fat, to cut out the people that you don't really need on your journey. But its goal is not to completely isolate you. And I think that's where we kind of get the mix up, right? Is I'm going through the lonely chapter. Oh no, isolation is the price I have to pay I have to be isolated. But maybe not. Like the lonely chapter is a result of going through suffering, but maybe it's not the ideal thing to aim at. Because let me just pull out, I've got Proverbs 18 verse 1. Let me actually just pull up, I've got my Bible right here. See how quickly I can find Proverbs. Here we go. I've got Proverbs 18 verse 1, reading from ESV. And it says, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. And I think the Bible's pretty consistent in this, from start to finish. We're not meant to do these journeys alone. And the tough part is I'm speaking from my own story, and I'm sure you could probably echo a similar sentiment. It's like, why? What other choice do I have? I've been going through this tough thing. These people are not helping. They're kind of making it worse. I don't need them in my life. The people I want to have in my life, I can't find them. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just kind of sit isolated? And we can get to that just now, but I think the important thing is to reframe that picture that I have to be isolated. The lonely chapter kind of puts it in a frame. So for me, hearing Chris Williamson and Alex Ramosi speaking about the lonely chapter, and I think Chris also spoke about it on Joe Rogan, the assessment that I'm seeing, or I couldn't find the word, where Chris is landing, I think where we're all landing, is that because of the circumstances of your life and the journey you're on, you're going to find yourself in the lonely chapter. I think that's accurate. That's what happens. You find yourself in the lonely chapter. But the conclusion shouldn't be the lonely chapter is necessary or ideal to get to where you want to get to. You can find yourself there, but it doesn't mean it's necessary or the ideal. And we should be aiming to get out of that. Because, I mean, as you've seen here, I mean, it's so clear. It says, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. I don't think you can get more clear than that. And I think the best way to put this is kind of the lion analogy. I don't know if you guys have watched nature documentaries before, but when lions are hunting, they don't, whether it's buffalo or antelope or whatever it is that they're hunting, they don't just go like, oh man, I want to go and grab, like, look at buffalo, for example. I think they have a decent time with the buffaloes because the buffaloes they're massive and they give the lions a tough time. They don't just say, oh, look, it's buffalo over there. Let's just go and just grab the biggest one or whatever it is. Let's just go pick this one, right? They chase the herd, and then the herd kind of runs, and they stick together as best as they can. But inevitably, well, I don't want to say inevitably. Sometimes they get lucky, and then one of them just kind of strays, and then they go after that one. But they actually have a strategy to say, I'm not going to attack this one buffalo while it's in the herd. We're actually going to try and separate it. Like, they work actively to separate. And they usually look for like the calves, the smaller animals, because they're easier to separate. But they usually aim to separate. They cannot attack one in a herd, because have you seen the buffalo? Dude, they're massive. They kind of, when they band together like this, the lions can't do anything. So their number one strategy is to isolate. Then they attack. Then they devour. And I think that's important for us to realize that, especially from a Christian perspective, right? The enemy looks to isolate, and then there he attacks you. And I've seen this myself. Like, I found myself kind of helpless, where I'm like, man, I don't really want to speak to a lot of people. I actually don't really want to go out and be around people. Like, I'm struggling right now. I just want to stay inside, be more by myself. I just found myself straying further and further from God, getting attacked a lot more, and finding things very difficult. And again, it's not to say you're not going to find yourself in the lonely chapter. Like, it happens. It happens as a function of the circumstances you face and the journey you're on. But it's not the ideal or something to aim at. And I think I want to pull out another verse. And for me, this is probably the best one in relation to all of this. It's Ecclesiastes 4, verse 9 to 12. And it says, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they can keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. And that right there is gold. It's gold. I think it ties in very well with Proverbs 18:1, where it says, isolating yourself goes against all sound judgment. It just doesn't make sense. I love the part, it says, a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Because it's like, when you're together, you guys make it more difficult to actually break, because you kind of leverage against each other. I was just thinking about the physics of like a rope. When a rope is being, like, I remember whenever you do kind of like DIY stuff, I don't know if your dads ever made you to do stuff around the house, but if you're working with like a rope, say you were trying to build a rope, if it's just like a one-stranded thing, it breaks very easily. But those ropes where it's 3 and they kind of intertwined with each other, they are a lot stronger. And you just think about it as like the physics around it. I don't know how the mechanism works, but it's like, just the fact that it's 3 and they kind of intertwined with each other. It's that idea of the sum. No, I'm sorry, let me frame this properly. It's that idea of where a sum of the parts. No, I can't get this right, man. I'm trying to speak from a perspective of like, if you have 3 things and when you put them together, they're worth more than if you just added the 3 together. So say you have 3 separate items and they're worth, let's say, 1. You've got 1, 1, 1, 1, right? But when you put them together, it's not 3, it's like 5 or something, right? So it's like the sum of the parts are more valuable than the individual parts put together, if that makes sense. I absolutely butchered that. That was kind of embarrassing. But cool, I get it, Gideon. Like I'm with you. It makes sense. The Bible's pretty clear on not kind of doing things alone, but there's a very serious challenge here. And I mentioned it, actually did mention it earlier now, where finding these guys that are on your wavelength is very, very difficult. It's hard to find people that are kind of walking the same journey with you, that you get along with, that want to be friends with you, that are in the same life stage as you. Like it just feels like a more and more difficult task to uh, to embark on. Like it's like, okay, cool, I need friends. Like, okay, happy days. I've been trying. How am I supposed to find those? And I think it becomes even more difficult when you're like kind of ambitious as well. So we obviously, Christian men, right? Like, cool. There's lots of Christian men out there, but again, you want to have that thing of being equally yoked with friends, right? You want to have friends that are kind of on the same journey, that are going to help you up, not kind of pull you down into like the worldly standards, right? But being faith driven, but also being just driven, right? Like being somebody who's like you're ambitious for the kingdom, or maybe you're ambitious for yourself, and that's something you need to work through. I think it's something I need to work through. But somebody who wants to build something, you've got drive to go build something, and you're Christian, and you're in this lonely chapter. It's like the intersection of that doesn't leave a lot of people, um, and it makes it very difficult. But that takes me kind of to my third part of the video in terms of how you get out of the lonely chapter. And the first part is realizing you don't need everyone, right? You just need the right few. And for me, I kind of put together this framework in my last video and a couple other videos where I call it the three circles framework. I guess we can call it that. So the first part is kind of the wider community, right? This is the church. This is where you need to be planted. I mean, the Bible's pretty clear in not forsaking the meeting of believers together. And then your second part is kind of your age, people around your age, and this is kind of small groups, right? So it's like, cool, you've got this big, like wide, like church gathering thing you have, on a weekly basis, right? But then now you've got kind of a smaller version of that. You've got small groups, so you guys meet and you do Bible study or whatever the case is, right? But it's still pretty big. It's big-ish, right? You go there to meet other people. Then there's the third part, the King's Table, which I've spoken about so many times, right? It's this idea of having 3-4 men that you go shield to shield with, like you go through life with. So in a season of suffering, they're the guys that are there praying for you. They're the guys checking up on you every week. It's like they're the people who are willing to walk that journey with you, right? We spoke earlier about people that aren't, you speak in a 5-minute conversation and all of a sudden they think they've got the answer to all your problems, but they're not actually willing to sit with you and find out like what the difficulty is and work through that with you. And that's where your King's Table is supposed to come in. You're supposed to have 3 or 4 men that you're doing life with. And I think that's the first part we need to realize, that you don't need a bunch of people. You actually just need the 3 or 4. And it's like, just find those 3 or 4. And it's like, okay, cool. Same story, Gideon. Like, great. I'm with you. But I can't find them. It's difficult, right? And for me, this is kind of a problem I face, and that's why I built the Vanguard, right? The whole idea behind the Vanguard is that we have a place where, young Christian men can come and meet other like-minded brothers, right? That they can actually, that are willing to do the hard work together and go through life together. And they understand what the concept of a King's Table is, which I think I've spoken about before, but it's this idea of just, you do things together, you do life together. And I just have this vision as well for the Vanguard itself. I mean, people come here and you meet like-minded guys, and then you guys grow together. That for me has always been something I've wanted for the longest time. Kind of like, you can look at it in conjunction with like a wife, right? It's like, okay, what's better if you're looking at it from a perspective of like, you're on a journey to success or whatever? Is it better to find people when you're already there and successful, or is it better to have them before and you guys grow and become successful together? I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer. Like, I want people that I'm walking the journey with, not only because when you get there, you don't know who's there, who wants to be around you because you're successful, but they would leave you when you're at your lowest, but just makes the journey better. Like, it makes it easier, I think, in some ways, because you're with your brothers, right? You're with guys that are kind of doing the same thing. It's It's Ecclesiastes 4 verse 12. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. It makes it more likely that you're going to be successful, but also it's more enjoyable. It's more enjoyable to have brothers that you're doing things with. And for me, I was like, man, this is rough. But somebody needs to build something. And for me, that's kind of the vision with the Vanguard, is for us to have a space online where you can come here like, man, I know the kind of guys I'm gonna find here. They're gonna be young Christian guys who are working towards something. That's the goal. And I've got big visions for this thing. But again, I think for you specifically, you'd want find a place like this, and you want to be intentional. Like, I think that's the important thing. That's the thing with the King's Table, is that it's intentional, right? It's going deep. It's not just, kind of this wide thing that you do where it's like, hey, you have these friends, say at a small group, or you have a men's group or whatever that you guys do, and you meet like weekly, or there's some kind of activity you guys do. And it's like, if that activity stopped, how many of you guys would still really be friends? How many of you guys are actually like deep friends and not just friends over a specific activity? And that's where this King's Table thing comes in, where it's like it's for those guys who are looking to be called deeper, right? Those guys who are looking for friends that you're gonna get held accountable. They're gonna be there with you, and you guys are walking a journey together. And there's this ability to go deep. And I don't know that a lot of our generation has that capacity or proclivity to want to go deeper. Like, we love shiny object syndrome. We love kind of just moving on to the next, etc., etc. And for me, I'm like, I don't want that. I don't think it helps. But also, it's really important when you're going through kind of suffering like this to have those guys are kind of they're there with you. They've got the full context of your life, and they know your history. You guys know each other's history, and you help each other, right? But you're walking this journey together, and you are a threefold cord. And for me, I'm like, that's what I want. I don't want this jumping around, kind of, we're friends for like a year or two, and then we move on and we do something. I don't want that. I want us to. I mean, I wish I would have had this from when I was young, but I want us to have like gone through school, high school. We've gone through these transition periods. Gotten married, had kids. Like, we're sitting there like with our kids thinking about how, man, remember when we used to go to school like at this place or whatever. Like, I want that. That for me is beautiful. Like, you have a lifelong friendship, not only because it's nice and all that stuff, but also for this kind of stuff. It helps for anchoring. It helps with like trust and everything like that. But the things, you don't need to have a bunch. You just need to have a few, and then you need to be intentional. I think as guys, we quite struggle with this. I remember hearing about how there's this thing that happens a lot when couples get old. If the wife dies, the husband very shortly after follows, because when men get married, we tend to not build community well. We're not good at like kind of keeping that thing up. Like I said, if you've got kind of an activity that's consistent, you'll go, right? If you've got like that's just kind of how we are as guys. Like the friends that guys end up making is kind of, oh, your wife and her husband, not her husband. Geez, that would be very that would be bad. Your wife and her friends and their husbands, and those are the friends you have, simply because they're just always at your house, you're always at their house, kind of thing. But that thing is being facilitated by your wives. It's not like you're choosing them, you're not picking them, right? And it's important for us as guys to take this seriously and to be intentional about it, because we suck at it. We're not really good at doing a lot of that stuff. We love kind of just building stuff. We love kind of working towards things. And if the other guys around there, it's sick. But if they're not there, it's kind of just like whatever. We don't see it as something important. But I'd hope, from this video, from just kind of this discussion, you'd realize the importance of it. Of like, hey, I need to have brothers. And I need this, and you need to be intentional about it. It's kind of like building anything. Building anything, you need to be intentional. And I think we suck at that. And for me, I built this thing personally. I was just like, I want to build that kind of space so I can have it for myself, but also help other guys kind of have a similar thing. And, we kind of just do things over, we can build the shared activities, etc., etc. But the goal is to go deep. That's kind of the mission around. But yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think about this topic. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe. I do have a Discord if you're looking for other like-minded friends as well. Also have a Patreon as well if you want to like have like a deeper, I guess, community. But yeah, until next time, see you guys.